This video is about CELPIP listening problem solving task. Now you imagine this, you're in a crucial meeting, a student in a classroom, or even just chatting with a friend, and suddenly a tiny problem pops up. It's not a disaster, it's what we call a challenge. And how you solve the challenge can make all the difference, right? So today we are diving into one of the most tricky yet exciting parts of the self-help listening exam, the problem-solving task. You will hear a conversation between two people facing a real-world dilemma, and your job, you need to listen carefully, understand the problem, and pick the best solution, all within minutes. Whether you're aiming for the perfect score or just want to get comfortable within the exam format, I'll guide you through real examples, give you detailed strategies, and show you how to spot the right answers, even when questions sound tricky. Okay, so ready to turn stress into success? Let's get started and unlock those high scores together. Now, let's move on to an example directly. I'm just going to speak the audio for you. Hey Kevin, I'm really stressed out about my upcoming presentation for work. I just found out that one of the speakers canceled at the last minute, and that's going to mess up the whole schedule. That's frustrating. Have you thought about changing the order of the presentation to fill in the gap? Maybe the other speakers can stretch their time a little. That could help, but some of the topics build off each other, so switching things around might confuse the audience. True, we don't want to confuse anyone. What about asking a colleague to do a brief overview or question and answer related to the council speaker's topic? That way, the audience stays engaged and keep the schedule intact. That's a good idea. I think Sarah might be able to cover that. I'll check with her. Also, maybe you can prepare some extra material or a short interactive activity to fill any remaining time. Keeps people interested and buys you some flexibility. Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. I feel better already. Good one. Now let's move on to the questions here. Now, the question is, what problem is Lisa facing with her presentation? Option A is the venue was changed. B, a speaker canceled last minute. C, presentation was moved to a different day. Fourth one, equipment failure. And the correct option is option B, a speaker canceled last moment, because that was clearly given, right? You need to listen for the core problem, which was stated explicitly early in the conversation. One of the speakers cancelled, right? That's a clear signal. Try to avoid confusing background details such as about the presentation topics or schedule, etc. Just focus on the main issue. And the next question is, what solution does Kevin first suggest? Changing the presentation schedule order, canceling the event, shortening the presentation, asking the audience to leave early. And the correct option is option A, changing the order of presentations, because the first solution offered usually comes right after the problem is stated, right? So changing the order, other speakers can stretch their time. He was telling, right? So keywords like order, stretch, or schedule often indicate the proposed fix. And let's move on to the third question. The question is, why does Lisa reject the first idea? Too complicated, topics depend on each other. She dislikes the idea, too costly. And the right option here is option B. The topics depend on each other. You need to listen not just to what is suggested, but also to why the speaker may reject it. Words like build off each other mean order matters, right? So rescheduling may confuse the audience. This shows the importance of context in choosing answers. And for the fourth one, the question here is, what alternative does Kevin offer? Counseling a speaker, having a colleague do an overview or question and answer, asking the audience to participate, taking a break. And the right option here is having a colleague to do an overview or question and answer. The second solution offered is often the most feasible alternative accepted by the listener, right? So you need to note the phrases like fill the gap, brief overview, or question answer, which indicate the actual solution taken. Now let's move on to our fifth question. The question is, what additional idea does Kevin suggest? Prepare extra material or an interactive activity, reschedule the event, hire a new speaker, shorten the event. And the right answer is option A. Prepare extra material or an interactive activity. So markers like also or at the end and suggestions about extra materials or interactive activities are important for ticking off additional backup plans, right? So this test if you understand multiple layers of solution. Now, let's see some of the things that you need to avoid in self-listening problem-solving task. Kindly make a note of it because this is going to be really helpful. The first one is avoid listening only for words. Then, what you need to listen? You need to listen for meaning. For example, many test takers focus on catching keywords instead of understanding speaker's intent or relationship. That's given in the example here. Many test takers focus on catching the keywords instead of understanding the speaker's intent or relationship. Let me tell you why that's a problem. Because speakers often rephrase ideas, they use idioms or express opinions indirectly. If you only chase specific words, then you will miss the deeper meaning, right? Here is an example given. If the speaker says, I'm not sure that would be a good idea, if you only hear good idea, you might think they agree, but here they actually disagree, right? So you need to focus on the tone, context, and attitude, not just vocabulary. The next one is avoid assuming the first solution is always correct. Many students pick the first suggestion mentioned in the conversation, assuming that's the correct answer. Do you know the reason why this will become a problem? Because the first idea is often rejected or modified later. The accepted solution usually comes near the end. Example, Kevin first suggests changing the order, but Lisa says no, right? So the correct answer is the second suggestion, having a colleague doing a question and answer. So you need to always track the conversation flow, like a problem, suggestion, reaction, then comes the decision. So the decision part usually leads to the right answer. The third one is avoid ignoring speaker emotions or tone. Some test takers focus on facts and miss the feelings. Part C and problem solving task test your ability to infer the tone. For example, like of your frustration or your relief or your doubt. So the tone often reveals whether a suggestion is accepted, rejected, or hesitantly agreed upon. If you see here the example, I guess that could work. This means it shows uncertainty, right? Because I guess that's a great idea. That means it shows an agreement. So you need to train your ear to notice the intonation, stress, and enthusiasm, not just the words. The next one is avoid overthinking tricky options. Students sometimes analyze too deeply and change a correct answer to a wrong one. And self listening questions are straightforward. They test comprehension, not your imagination. Here is an example. If the speaker says one of the speakers cancelled, you should not assume that the whole event was cancelled, right? So try to go with the literal meaning of what's clearly stated and try to avoid adding assumptions not supported by the audio. And the fifth one is avoid ignoring connectors and keywords. Missing small connecting words like but, however, or actually can lead to misunderstanding because these words often signal a change of opinion, a contrast, or solution. So these are the crucial clues for answers. Here is an example. I thought about switching the order, but that might confuse the audience. The word but it signals the rejection of the previous idea, right? So you can underline or mentally note connectors like the words but, however, so, then, maybe, what if, actually, instead. And the sixth one is avoid writing notes on every word because some candidates try to write everything down and end up missing the flow of the conversation. So, if you do that, then you will lose focus on meaning and tone. Write only short keywords, okay? And avoid rushing the answer choices. Selecting the first option that sounds familiar to what you heard. CELPIP uses paraphrasing. The answer may be phrased in a different way. So if you're selecting the first options which you felt that sound familiar to you, then that could be the wrong answer, right? For example, in the audio, if you're hearing the phrases as we could ask Sarah to do a short talk, and if you're getting an answer choice, having a colleague do an overview, same meaning but different words, right? Because that has been paraphrased in the answer. So you need to look for meaning matches, not word matches. Okay, so that's all for today's video. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more self tips. See you in the next video. Bye bye.